She is a maiden who has remained unwed for 300 years, still preserving her childlike innocence. Taking off his wig, he transformed into the queen's beloved male lover. Compared to the aged and withered queen, he is like a blooming, beautiful flower. The queen could not regain the youthful appearance she once had, but she could use her supreme power to declare the boy her trophy. The queen gifts him an expensive present, a vast expanse of land, this estate, and countless gold coins. He is also awarded the highest knightly honor, with the promise that he and his heirs will enjoy it forever. However, the queen attaches a condition.
Do not fade, do not wither, do not grow old.
Her words seem to turn into a curse that follows the boy for a full 400 years. This is a film from 1992, and watching it again today, it still feels very avant-garde. No one could imagine that this is actually a novel written in 1928, defined as the longest and most touching love letter in the world. Let us step into this film that can fill our minds with all sorts of crazy thoughts. The peerless beauty Orlando was only 16 years old at this time. He was born into an old British aristocratic family. He often cuddles under an oak tree, holding paper and a pen, lost in his own world. Orlando receives a good education. He is sensitive and slightly melancholic. He loves poetry and writing, yearning for nature, until one day, the queen comes to visit his home, and Orlando dresses in court attire to meet the legendary Queen Elizabeth, said to be the most beautiful. He dares not look up, only seeing the queen's wrinkled hands. The queen did not blame him for his recklessness, but looked at him with a little affection. During dinner, Orlando recites a poem he has written for the queen, praising youth, which causes the elderly queen to show signs of displeasure. The father quickly explained that the beauty his son was talking about was a praise of the queen. In that moment of eye contact, the temperamental queen falls in love with the naive Orlando. The queen is captivated by his long, elegant legs and handsome face.
I want you here in England with me. You will be the sun of my old age and the limb of my infirmity, my favorite, my mascot.
Though Orlando becomes the queen's favorite, he feels deeply lonely. Soon the queen passed away, and Orlando's father also passed away soon after, leaving Orlando feeling very confused. The presence of death makes him realize he will witness the departure of everyone around him. A sense of helplessness that forever lingers. He was engaged to a noble lady, but this was merely a social convention and he did not love the woman. On the Great Frost Festival in England in 1610, British nobles held a grand ceremony. They show no sympathy for the laborers who have fallen through the ice, instead ridiculing these unfortunate poor. Orlando encounters Sasha, the daughter of a Russian diplomat. She is petite and charming, effortlessly gliding on the ice as she draws perfect curves around her father. This scene awakens the long-dormant love within Orlando, making him forget his fiancée. At the dinner, several noblemen fawn over Sasha. She doesn't care for them and deliberately engages in conversation with Orlando in French across the table. Their tacit understanding was evident in their every smile, and it seemed that everyone in the palace could see their close relationship. Orlando's fiancée becomes furious. A friend advises him not to ruin his bright future, but Orlando disagrees. He only wants to follow his heart. He is madly in love with Sasha.
For your sake, I would hunt wolf instead of rabbit and drink vodka instead of whiskey.
How generous.
As for marriage to the good lady, frozen everything is so palpably absurd that I scarcely give it a thought.
How gallant.
I feel as if I had been hooked through the nose and rushed through the waters, painfully yet with my own consent.
How brave.
Orlando's fiancée, filled with rage, confronts him.
My lord, have you quite forgotten that we are betrothed?
My lady, I am being constantly reminded.
You speak so lightly of it. You've betrayed me. The treachery of men.
It would never have worked. A man must follow his heart.
Orlando and Sasha fell in love. He was sentimental, and even though Sasha stayed with him, he was still worried that Sasha would leave him.
Nothing thicker than a knife's blade separates melancholy from happiness.
Why are you sad?
Because I can't bear this happiness to end.
But we are together.
Yes, now. But what about tomorrow? And the day after?
Orlando, I think you suffer from a strange melancholy, which is you suffer in advance.
His intense love even causes Orlando to hallucinate. He sees Sasha kissing a sailor and rushes onto the ship to confront the sailor, only to be pushed aside. Sasha begins to feel repelled by Orlando's jealousy. She explains to him that the sailor merely placed her on the deck, and it was the damned fog that clouded Orlando's vision. In this moment, the film portrays Orlando, using the selfish voice of masculinity, objectifying women.
I cannot think of a life without you. Stay with me. Don't ever go.
But it's impossible.
But why?
Because when the ice breaks, we must go.
But we're linked. Our destinies are linked. You're mine.
Why?
Because I adore you.
Sasha and Orlando agreed to elope together. However, on the day of their plan, Sasha does not show up. The cold winter has passed and spring is here.
Be here.
The sudden heavy rain broke the ice on the Thames. He remembers Sasha saying that the day the ice breaks will be the day she leaves. Orlando's dream was shattered and the huge humiliation made him angry. Orlando loves not just Sasha but also himself. But Sasha, yearning for freedom, requires enough tolerance that Orlando's narrow-mindedness only suffocates her. Though they are intimate, Orlando has never entered Sasha's heart. Sasha's contempt for him also suggests that their love will end in tragedy.
The treachery of women.
This is what Orlando's fiancée once said to him, and now it is coming true for him. The breakup caused Orlando to fall into a deep sleep for 7 days before he woke up. The doctor came every day but could not find the cause. One morning, he finally awakens. He bid farewell to his first love completely, and also bid farewell to his youthful recklessness.
I can find only 3 words to describe the female sex. None of which are worth expressing.
Only by swimming in poetry can Orlando momentarily forget his heartaches. Starting in 1650, Orlando locks himself away in the estate. He became obsessed with writing, which helped him heal his broken heart, with remarkable results. This kind of life lasted for 40 years, but he seemed to be forgotten by time and remained young and handsome. He creates a poetry collection titled The Great Oak, inviting the famous writer Nick Green to visit, hoping to receive some insight. Green remarks that most genius works stem from poverty and despair, as they allow for the most authentic emotions. He sarcastically suggests that Shakespeare's works are not born of true passion, but rather of necessity to make a living. English poetry has perished. He goes on to speak the truth. He declares that Orlando lives in luxury, unable to truly experience those emotions, and thus, his works lack the qualities of genius. Green's works are cherished by young people, yet he defines his own writings as rubbish because he must write these things to cover his annual rent of £300. Orlando voluntarily takes on Green's rent. Green then turned around and described Orlando as a pretentious aristocratic libertine and regarded Orlando's works as worthless. Orlando was angry about the exaggerated negative comments made by the writer he admired and threw the letter into a blazing fire. Yet he stubbornly admires Green, cherishing their friendship while paying the rent he promised. By the year 1700, having suffered great blows in love and poetry, Orlando turns his focus to politics. He requests the king to send him as an ambassador to Constantinople, and Orlando diligently fulfills his duties. At first, the king of Constantinople does not regard Orlando's arrival with much significance.
It has been said to me that the English make a habit of collecting countries.
Oh, we have no designs upon your sovereignty at all. No, none at all.
You would assist us in defense against mutual enemies.
Only after they become familiar does the king realize that Orlando has traveled such a long distance solely to mend his broken heart. Later, they become friends, sharing bread and wine, and exchanging worldviews. Orlando stays there for 10 years. Archduke Harry came to present him with a medal, and Orlando was promoted by Queen Anne. At the celebration dinner, they were suddenly attacked by enemy forces. The king informed Orlando that the enemy's army was at their gates, requesting his assistance. In loyalty to their long friendship, Orlando took up arms, but in war, he witnessed death and bloodshed. He voluntarily went to awaken an injured soldier from the opposing nation. Archduke Harry reminded him that he shouldn't try to heal an enemy who was fighting against him. Orlando fell into deep contemplation. He detested the brutality and suffering that power brought to the people. Over the course of a century, Orlando has increasingly incorporated women's compassion and tolerance. The intense pain led him to lose consciousness, and he fell into another deep sleep. 7 days later, he awoke adorned with beautiful curls, surrounded by a sacred light. In that moment of removing his wig, He bid farewell to his previous gender identity. Orlando discarded the clothing that represented her masculine past and became a woman.
Same person. No difference at all. Just a different sex.
The transformation in character brought Orlando a newfound assurance, clearly marking a separation from the handsome male he once was. Orlando journeyed through the desert back to his homeland. His identity changed from Orlando to Lady Orlando. She began to understand punishment and privilege. Having spent 30 years as a man, Orlando had taken it for granted that women should be submissive, chaste, cultured, and appropriately adorned. Now, as a true woman, she found herself spending hours each day to don elegant attire. The mere time spent on grooming instilled in her an immense respect for women. The enormous skirts, while beautiful, constrained every step a woman took. In 1750, during the period of British classicism, cultural salons flourished, and Orlando immersed herself in various cultural gatherings in London. Despite her butler's advice that she shouldn't go alone, the poetry-loving Orlando wouldn't pass up such an opportunity. Dressed in satin adorned with bows and towering wigs, her smile was as rosy and charming as the blush on her cheeks. Archduke Harry recognized her immediately. Women remained confined as mere dependents. Those self-important writers arrogantly discussed how inferior women were. In that moment, Orlando realized how abhorrent her previous self had been. She finally discovered the reason behind being toyed with by Sasha. Immediately, she refuted the grandiloquent discussions of the noble elite.
Gentlemen, I find it strange. You are poets, each one of you, and speak of your muse in the feminine, and yet you appear to feel neither tenderness nor respect towards your wives, nor towards females in general.
Madam, I have only the highest regard and purest respect for females.
I find no evidence of that sentiment in your conversation.
Orlando fell silent. In that era, women had no inheritance rights and no property of their own. It was exceedingly difficult for them to find work. It seemed the only way to survive was to marry. Orlando reflected from a male perspective, reevaluating her past prejudices and misunderstandings of women. At this moment, she resonated with the pain of women bound by the constraints of their time. Disasters soon followed. Upon returning home, she received several lawsuits. The nobles believed that Orlando had always been a woman, but pretended to be a man to the queen, so she could not get the land and royal inheritance promised by the queen. They sought to reclaim the properties and gifts bestowed by the queen. Archduke Harry proposed to Orlando, wishing to offer her a respectable life.
I'm offering you my hand.
Oh, Archduke. That's very kind of you, yes. I cannot accept.
But I am England, and you are mine.
I see. On what grounds?
That I adore you.
And this means that I belong to you?
Refusing me?
I am.
Orlando had said the same thing to Sasha at the beginning. Now, with gender swapped, those words felt like a devastating irony. Orlando refused the proposal, but was teased that he would be lonely all his life. She lifted her huge skirt and dived into the green wall of the garden. The huge skirt was squeezed by the narrow and dense plant walls and moved forward. Orlando is unable to clearly define whether she is a man or a woman. Now, she feels like a feather caught in a whirlwind. In this patriarchal society, everything is controlled by men. She wants to scream, yet feels utterly helpless. The expensive satin dress can no longer contain Orlando's yearning for equality and freedom. The tense string rhythm in the film approaches step by step, accompanying Orlando through layers of mazes. As she emerges from the fog, she finds herself in the Victorian era. 100 years later, her romantic and extravagant poof dress transforms into a stately, lightweight robe. With quickened breaths, she falls hard onto the green grass. The time shifts to 1850. Orlando lies on the grass, encountering a man who has fallen from his horse. She falls in love with the American adventurer, Shelmardine. This is during the British Industrial Revolution, and Shelmardine infects Orlando with his ideas of freedom, equality, and openness. He bears a striking resemblance to Sasha. In this cycle of centuries, their identities have swapped, and now Orlando has become a woman. Shelmardine was totally different from the other British men. His next words strengthen Orlando's love for him even more.
Freedom must be taken, freedom must be won.
If I were a man,
You.
I might choose not to risk my life for an uncertain cause. I might think that freedom won by death is not worth having. In fact,
You might choose not to be a real man at all. Say if I was a woman.
You.
I might choose not to sacrifice my life caring for my children, nor my children's children, nor to drown anonymously in the milk of female kindness, but instead say to go abroad, would I then be
A real woman.
The once innocent boy has now become a mature woman. This transformation is not merely about gender, but about Orlando's true growth. She realizes deeply that regardless of gender, one must realize their own value and do what they love. For the first time, Orlando experiences genuine and beautiful love, filled with freedom. Through Shelmerdine, she receives a court ruling stating that as a woman, she cannot inherit the estate. Without waiting for the judge to finish pronouncing the verdict, she signs it, trading her female identity for equality and freedom. However, their love did not keep Shelmerdine. When Orlando expresses her desire to have a child for their love, Shelmerdine insists that his love belongs to the world, and he must continue on his new adventures. At this moment, Orlando does not try to hold him back. Perhaps true love is about drawing positive energy from one another. The physical distance between them cannot compare to the deep connection of their souls. That day, in the pouring rain, they say their last goodbye.
Orlando!
Goodbye, Shelmerdine! Good luck!
Orlando accepts the baptism in the rain. Each drop carries the power of life and growth. She sheds her fatigue and worries, fully merging into this purity that resonates with nature. The scene transitions to the sounds of war during World War II, and Orlando is pregnant. She dodges bullets to protect her unborn child. She is reborn amidst the chaos of war. Then, the scene shifts to modern times, where Orlando has achieved a successful career. She is an accomplished writer, stitching together her poetry collection The Great Oak over 400 years, which is ultimately published and wins awards. Orlando is no longer as submissive and respectful as it was when facing Nick Green. The publisher curiously asks how long it took to create this poetry collection. Orlando does not answer directly but shifts the focus to the audience. The publisher has no idea that this work took her nearly 400 years to complete. Orlando rides a motorcycle with her daughter to what was once her estate. Her daughter has inherited her long legs and beauty. The estate has now become a modern museum, and she is fortunate to witness the changes through history. She still retains her innate appearance. A portrait of Orlando hangs on the walls of the estate, and tourists occasionally take photos of the ancient and mysterious estate owner. They cannot imagine that the woman beside them is the very Orlando depicted in the portrait. At the end of the film, Orlando reflects on her 400 years of life, showcasing her transitions from a young boy, a duke, a woman, to a noblewoman. Countless versions of Orlando. Behind her, the oak tree now requires several people to wrap their arms around it. Although her appearance and figure have not changed much over 400 years, her thoughts are no longer shackled by fate. She casts the past aside and experiences rebirth. From Queen Elizabeth I to modern times, she embodies a blend of both feminine and masculine qualities, achieving a balance between her inner world and the external environment. The daughter saw her mother's tears.
Why are you sad?
I'm not. I'm happy.
Orlando turned his gaze to the angels singing above him. Although this is a film from 1992, the modern and avant-garde adaptation remains rare and sophisticated even today. Female director Sally Potter adapted the screenplay from the novel of the same name by 20th-century British writer Adeline Virginia Woolf. It is a typical surrealist film. Death, love, poetry, politics, social interactions, sexuality, and rebirth intertwine to connect the various points in Orlando's life and her process of awakening. Orlando represents Woolf's hopes and aspirations. She desires for women to break free from their constraints and take charge of their lives. Just like Orlando does, the span of 400 years also serves as a magnificent history of the costumes of the British Empire, from Queen Elizabeth I to the Victorian era, through World War II, and into the modern day. We witness the vibrant Baroque style of the 17th century, the blooming neoclassicism of the 18th century, and the simple and elegant modern pantsuits. No one is more suitable than Tilda Swinton to portray Orlando's ever-changing life. Swinton, born into one of Scotland's oldest families, easily transitions between genders. She faces the accolades with a calm demeanor, much like Orlando, who remains unfazed by fame and disgrace. Modern women have improved greatly compared to that era. We have enough choices for what we want to do, our own jobs, and marriage is no longer the only way out for women. She called on each of us not to simply look at the other gender from a certain perspective. If one cannot rise above the constraints of gender, true freedom will remain elusive. Be brave, do not fear solitude, and do not let loneliness hold you hostage.